Good morning, YouTube. Oh, it's feeding time, and we're day 2 after adding the oxygen bubbles to improve oxygenation of the water. Basically, what the bubbles are doing is carrying gases that, this is a very deep tank, so it's the deepest tank I've ever had. And normally, with other tanks I had, just moving the water, the flow, like I had lots of flow on the top, lots of agitation. That's normally enough to handle things. But because the tank is so deep, it's allowing gases to collect at the bottom that weren't making it to the top. And that was causing an oxygen issue overall in the tank. That contributed to the aggression. Now you can see he's still trying to fend people off of the food pile, and he's dominating. I spread food all over the tank, and everybody's already had a chance to eat. I trick him so that they eat. They actually get the worms before he does, the bloodworms. But anyhow, lots of food, nobody starves, and the aggression has gone way down in just the last 24 hours, which is great because I was worried about it. Of course, factor A was I introduced new fish. Factor B was when I brought him home, he didn't eat for near 3 weeks. He was in that probably traveled here from Asia or something mode, and his tummy was skinny, his head was fat. He was just, that's what happens, you get a new discus, they take a while to adapt sometimes. And when the weather got warm, the tank temperature increased because we had some heat wave conditions. And during the heat wave, I added the new fish, and the combination of the increased heat caused oxygen pressure, and then I added fish that caused more pressure, and he just got aggressive. But there's a reason why they get aggressive in a low oxygen environment, and this is basically it. Cichlids in general, but that includes discus, whether they be in Africa or South America. They both face the same environmental challenges in the sense that there is a season of plenty, a rainy season, where they will be relaxed and calm and worried about eating and breeding, and they won't be aggressive, or they'll be less aggressive. They certainly won't be trying to kill each other. And then there's the dry season where water evaporates, streams and rivers drop, and a lot of fish get stuck in pools, in pockets of water that are no longer flowing. And when this happens, when this season happens, of course, any discus caught in a pond or pocket of water is dealing with a reduced oxygen environment. And when they get into that mode, when they get into a reduced oxygen environment, they become highly competitive, because if there's too many discus in that puddle, and there's not enough oxygen, then it's a fight for survival. They will literally kill each other off. Only the strong will survive, and it's a whole survival of the fittest situation. So you have to make sure that your O2 levels are sufficient in your tank. And although I didn't want a bubble curtain, I actually like the whole glass look. I could use maybe a wave maker that might have solved this just as well, but I went with the tried and true foot-long bubble brick because I know that works. So it doesn't look half bad. I mean, it's kind of pretty in its own way, but I had to do it, so I'm glad I did it. Everybody's peaceful now. Things are much, much more calm. And pardon my hiccups. And yeah, so let's have a closer look. He might be my favorite fish right now. I think he's going to be absolutely gorgeous when he grows. I love the shape of his head, the steepness of his slope. I think he's going to be a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And he's very deep blue. The other one's more turquoise. This guy's going to be a deep blue. Here's the other guy up here. They were born to the same parents. We'll see what happens with them. They're doing really well. They constantly eat. They constantly graze. They don't really get picked on. They've adapted well. Who do we have here? There's Skeletor doing his job. Skeletor has been eating like a beast. He definitely looks a little better on his sides. He's starting to look a little more filled out on the sides. The bottom of his head is definitely a little thicker. So, you know, I think I'm coming up on a week with these guys. So in a week, he's turning around. He's turning the corner. His crest was so thin that he was definitely in danger, but he's gonna make it. I'm happy. Fingers crossed. I mean, he could take a turn for the worse, but like I said, I'm very focused on the whole optimal conditions. I'm running the UV. I think that's very important with a discus tank. Actually, I was watching videos, I won't mention any names, to another individual, making YouTube discus videos, and I've been watching all of them, and I appreciate them all because I've learned a great deal. But this individual was really sort of bashing UV and saying it was all unnecessary. And you don't need it as long as you're keeping up your water changes. But you'd look at his water quality in the videos, and there was always particles and stuff in his water. And then, like, follow-up videos after totally knocking the UV early on in his series, it was constant videos about, this is how you apply parasite treatment to your discus tank. This is how you deworm your discus. And it was just he was constantly treating his tank. So, like, I think if he had been running UV, he wouldn't have needed to treat his tank all those times. And that's really, I think, the truth behind UV is, I believe it's a necessity for a tank with fussy fish, whether it be saltwater fish or fish like discus. And optimal water quality is just the thing that keeps disease away. The low stress environment is perfectly clean water, and that's what keeps your fish safe. So it just doesn't make sense to not run a UV. Like, literally, the one I have is down here. I don't know if we're going to see well because I don't have a light in my setup, but it's That's the unit. It's in the corner there. It's a sun unit. It's a 15-watt bulb. It pumps 236 gallons per hour through it. And my sump's only got about 35 gallons of water in it. My sump pump, I think, does about 150 gallons an hour. So, you know, a lot of people will tell you that a smaller one like this is no good for a larger tank. My tank's on the larger side, it's 90 gallons. But because the sump is small and the sump pump is close to half the rate of the flow rate for the UV, everything's going through this UV somewhere around twice every cycle. So it's working. It's working. My water is crystal clear. My algae all went away. Because it's going through twice, it's basically working as well as the longer 30-watt bulbs would work. They tell you need a big long one because the water needs to run longer, but you could just run it. It's running through twice, so it's the same thing. And if I had a larger sump and a larger tank, I would just put 2 of these things in the sump because they're relatively cheap and it's like less than $50. You get 3 total bulbs with it. The bulbs last like they won't burn out for over 3,000 hours, which is like basically a year. But you just change them out every 6 months and then you're good. So a $50 unit, 3 bulbs, lasts you an entire year. I'm going to throw the unit out and just buy a new unit again in a year and keep going, because the UV will degrade the material the unit's made out of. UV degrades everything. So you don't want to buy something that's cost like $500 to take care of your UV, because the housing that bulb's contained in is going to degrade no matter what. Like, no matter what it's made of, it's going to degrade and it's going to break down, and you just don't want an old one. So you should change the unit out every year. I'll put a link to the one I'm using down below this video, and it's cheap enough to easily replace every year, and it comes with all the bulbs you'll need for a year and a half. So you can even, I'll probably run it the year and a half and then buy a new set. And that's that. But I definitely recommend UV. I think it's essential. I think it's cheap, and it's so cheap that, like, why bother? The cost of meds alone, like, dwarfs the cost of one of these units once every year and a half. It will definitely help you keep your fish healthy. And the other thing is, I believe a lot of the hype out there is you get chemical companies, won't mention any names, that are very generous about supporting YouTubers, which is great. I love it. I wouldn't mind if that ever happened to me. But UV is a threat to them. So there seems to be a lot of influencers that want to push you in the direction of chemicals or not using the UV, so you end up in a situation where you got to buy the meds, and you got to buy the chemicals, and that's very expensive, and it's probably a multi-billion-dollar business. So of course a lot of the influencers out there seem to be shying away from the concept of UV or talking it down, and I don't think that's by accident, because there's just really no disadvantage. I'm running it 24/7. I don't believe running it like on 4-hour cycles does you any good either. That's not good for your cycle. Your cycle needs stability, it needs consistency, and so turning it on and turning it off is just messing with things in a way you don't want to mess with. You want to run the puppy 24/7 and allow your cycle to adjust to it, always on, and you will have crystal clear water always. Like it's effortless crystal clear water. It'll reduce how the volume of your required water change and the effort that you're putting into your water change. There's just no downsides. It's absolutely, I can't understand why. Someone please explain to me why it's frowned on. Why a UV filter would be frowned on. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. No. But I guess that's my, we'll wrap this up for today. It's getting to be a little long. But yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about that. The UV stuff and O2. So, you know, temperature goes up, consider your O2 is going to drop. And if your tank gets warmer than it was and your fish, you know, pick up on the aggression, it's probably a sign that you have an O2 issue, and the fish have switched into survival mode as a result. So I hope this video has been informative, and please, if I'm wrong, let me know. If you want to add to anything I say, please leave it in the comments, because I'm trying to learn just like everyone else. This is my first Discus experience, and I'm cataloging my videos because, you know, I want to show the progress of, you know, guy who has had fish but never owned Discus. Let y'all see my challenges, how I deal with them, my progress, how my tank's doing over time. And I'm going to be upgrading in here. I've got a 65-gallon tall coming. It's going to be basically just like this, but a foot shorter. It's going to fit in this little gap over here. Really nice, perfectly actually, and leave me about, you know, that much space in between here and that much space in between my counter. And then I'm going to build a 2x4 rack over top, and I'm going to line tanks up top. And it's gonna turn into an interesting situation. I'll put 10 and 20 gallon tanks up on that shelf, and hopefully by next spring we'll get into spawning some Discus. So please stay tuned, and if you haven't already, do consider subscribing. I could use all the help I can get with the, you know, YouTube and the knowledge of others is greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.